Morning sunlight glimmered across the steel tracks of Charlotte's light rail system, cutting through the quiet hum of another weekday commute. People were rushing, headphones in, backpacks slung low, coffees clutched like lifelines. And somewhere among them was Iryna Zarutska, a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee who had spent the last year trying to rebuild her life from the ashes of a war she had barely escaped. To the people around her, she might have looked like any young woman on her way to work, hair tucked behind her ear, a canvas tote bag resting on her lap, eyes fixed out the window at the familiar blur of passing city blocks. But inside Iryna was another world, a world full of memories she rarely spoke about. Nights spent hiding in basements as air raid sirens wailed above. A train ride across borders with only a backpack. The phone call telling her that her apartment in Kyiv no longer existed. She had carried all of it with her quietly, bravely into this new life in North Carolina. But on this morning, as the train slowed at the next stop, she was simply trying to get through another day. The doors opened. A few passengers stepped in. Among them was a man no one paid much attention to. He didn't shout, didn't pace, didn't display the kind of erratic behavior that alerts instinct. He simply stepped on, scanned the car, and chose a seat not too close, not too far. The train lurched forward. A few passengers glanced up, then returned to phones, emails, podcasts. Iryna checked the schedule on her screen, then tucked her phone away. For a moment, everything felt normal. But what happened next was so sudden, so senseless, that later witnesses struggled to put the moment into words. The man rose, took one step, then another. Before anyone could process what was happening, he lunged. A sharp flash of metal, a gasp, a scream. A sound so human and so terrified that it froze the entire train car in place. Iryna staggered back, confusion and shock etched across her face. She pressed her hands to her chest, the hands that had held passports, papers, dreams now stained with blood. Someone shouted for help. Someone else yelled to call 911. A passenger tried to intervene, but the attacker swung wildly, forcing everyone back. The train screeched to an emergency halt. Doors flung open. People poured out. But Iryna collapsed where she stood, her body trembling, eyes wide and searching as if trying to understand why this was happening. Why, after surviving a war, she was now dying on a train in a city she had hoped would finally offer peace. By the time paramedics arrived, she was fading fast. One clutched her hand, telling her to stay awake, to hold on, to keep breathing. But the life that had crossed oceans and borders, that had survived sirens and rubble, slipped away on a quiet stretch of track in Charlotte. And within hours before her family overseas could even process the news, a tragedy exploded across the internet. Ukrainian refugee fatally stabbed on Charlotte light rail attack appears random. Young woman escaped war, only to be killed in the U.S. Mental health crisis or hate crime. Public demands answers. Hashtag surge. TikTok explainer videos spread like wildfire. Comment sections filled with outrage, sorrow, political takes, conspiracy theories, culture war debates. To some, her death became a conversation about public safety. To others, about race. To others still, a symbol of the mental health failures across America. But in the noise, the trending, the arguing, the viral thumbnails, one thing began to blur: Iryna herself. She became a headline, a statistic, a symbol, a debate topic. Lost in that storm was the real young woman. The one who had worked evenings at a cafe, who sent money back home to her mother, who loved taking photos of Charlotte's skyline because it reminded her of hope. She was funny, shy, soft-spoken, the kind of person who apologized even when she wasn't at fault. She had planned to start community college next spring, but online, narratives swallowed her whole. News anchors dissected her final moments. Influencers turned her story into content. Political figures pointed to the tragedy as proof of whatever agenda they already believed. Meanwhile, the people who had actually been there, the passengers who saw the attack unfold, were left haunted by what they had witnessed. One woman refused to take the train again. A man who tried to help told reporters he still heard Iryna's gasps at night. The train operator went on leave, unable to erase the image of the emergency stop, the scream, the blood on the floor. And somewhere thousands of miles away in a small apartment in western Ukraine, a mother stared at her daughter's photo on the screen. A photo now attached to a news story shared by strangers, debated by millions. The tragedy had become a media moment, a narrative, a symbol of whatever the internet wanted it to be. But beneath the viral noise, the real story was painfully simple. A young woman who fled war searching for safety was taken by violence she never saw coming. She did not come to America to create controversy. She did not come to be a headline. She came to live. And in the end, that is what makes her loss cut so deeply, not the politics, not the debates, not the clicks, but the truth that somewhere within a crowded train car, a life full of promise was ended by a moment no one could explain. The city mourned her. Strangers left flowers. A candlelight vigil lit the night near the station where she took her last ride. And for a brief moment, when the noise faded, people remembered the human story, not the viral one. They remembered Iryna. And they whispered her name into the quiet, hoping the world would hear it above the chaos.